Good morning and welcome to Yellow Rose Forge. This week I'm going to be making a Basket Hilted Scottish Backsword. That's the sword that I won Forged in Fire with. When you win the show, they keep the sword. It's a fair trade. They give you $10,000. But I'd love to have that sword in my collection, and I've had a lot of people ask to see that sword, so I thought it'd be fun to make one. I'm taking a little time off for Christmas, so I'm going to work on some stuff that I want to work on. Thought it'd be cool to let you guys join the journey with me, so let's have some fun. So right off the bat, I'm going to do one thing a little bit differently than I did on the show. I'm still going to do a 46 layer Damascus, really low layer count, but I really like the way that it looked. But what I'm going to do differently here is instead of starting with 3-inch long pieces, I'm going to start with 6-inch long pieces, which means I'm going to have to fold this once to get the layer count that I want. I'm going to be using 1080 and 15N20. And so I buy these just like this, already pre-cut to 6-inch lengths, but they've still got some mill scale on them, and it's really, really important to clean your Damascus clean your steel before you put it together for the Damascus. So that's what I'm going to do now in the grinding room. When I'm welding my Damascus together, I just use a TIG welder with no filler rod. That way I don't have to worry about a lot of extra material getting in and contaminating my billet. Some of that will still have to be ground off, but all of that is going to be so shallow that by the time I get done forging, reforging, cleaning up and everything else, that I don't really have to worry about it as much because they're going to be really, really shallow welds. Okay, so I think I've already messed up on one thing filming this, and that is I think the camera angle was wrong while I was doing my weld. That's the advantage of having a film crew. So what I've done here so far is I've welded this up, but I've also changed my mind. I'm actually going to take this stack of 23 layers, I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to go ahead and just weld it together again. That way it's going to be 3 inches long instead of 6 inches long. That way I don't have to clean it up and restack it and refold it. One of the things that I learned when I was doing the show is that time is important, and if you can do a time saver, then do the time saver, as long as you're not sacrificing quality for that. So since I've got the equipment to process a really thick billet here, I'm going to go ahead and do that just to save time in making this video, because I really want to get this sword made. So I'm actually going to put one extra piece in the middle to make my pattern consistent, which will give me 47 layers instead of 46. Okay, so I fully expect for this handle to break off at some point. In fact, I may break it off intentionally. But this will get me started, this will get my weld set and let me start drawing out the blade. And while I'm waiting on the forge to heat up, I'm going to give it a little soak in some kerosene. While my steel is heating up, let's talk about the guard, which is arguably more complicated than the sword. So when I made this the first time, I had a paper pattern that I made. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to make some size adjustments so that I hope, make a slightly better guard than I did last time. I was happy with the way that it turned out, but there were a few issues that I ran into along the way that I think I can simplify the construction a little bit. So what I've done is I've roughed this out, and now I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to make some additions to it and then remake the paper pattern as I go. Okay, so what I just did was initially set my weld. I'm not going to do a lot of forging to start with. I want to make sure that my steel is nice and stuck together. So I got it really, really hot, set it on the press. Now I'm going to heat it back up, and I'm going to work this steel at a really, really high heat to start with, because you really don't want to work it at You really don't want to work it at a cold heat. You don't want to work it cold. So I'm not going to show every hammer blow and every squeeze of the press because that would get redundant and boring. But I'll tell you what I'm doing. What I'm doing here is I'm taking my large billet and I'm consolidating it down to a more manageable size. And as I squeeze it down on the press, I'm ensuring that I'm getting a solid forge weld. My billet is getting drawn out to a longer length. And once it gets down to, let's say, I don't know, maybe 2 inches or so, then I'll actually start working it on the power hammer, which does a little better job of drawing it out quicker. While I'm waiting on the steel to heat, I use that opportunity to work on other things, and so right now I've been working on my paper template. And the easiest way that I know of to get the paper template to be symmetrical is to simply fold it in half, and then when you cut it and open it back up, you get a nicely symmetrical template. Okay, now that the sword has been normalized, that's what I was doing, running it in and out of the forge. The blade has been cooled off very slowly, clamped between 2 pieces of wood. It should be straight. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to do a rough grind on it before I actually harden the blade. After I quench the sword, I like to clamp it up between a couple of 2x6s to let it cool down the rest of the way while it's in the process of hardening, because the sword actually won't harden until it gets to a certain temperature, so you've got a little time to move it around. So I quench the sword, which will ensure that it will harden as long as I get my time temperature transformation curve right, Then I clamp it up in between the 2x6s to cool off the rest of the way. Those will hold it straight while it cools, and I should have a nicely hardened straight sword when it comes out. Okay, so the sword is forged, the sword is in the tempering oven, the sword has been hardened, it's hard, it's straight. I'm now tempering it, and then what I've done is I've taken my pattern and I've glued it down to this piece of plate, and I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to use that as kind of the basis, the building block for the basket hilt. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out. I'm not going to do a whole lot more today. I've spent about the same amount of time messing around with this as I did before, maybe a little bit less. When I made this for the show, I finished in just under the amount of time I was given for day one, and I think I did it about an hour, maybe an hour and a half faster today, so that's kind of a good feeling. A little bit of progress there. Yeah, it's going to be cool. So I'm going to call it there for today. Tomorrow I'll try to get some more stuff done and show a video, and I'm hoping that by the end of this week, I'm going to try to do this in the same time parameters that I did for the show, but I'm not going to cut any corners and skimp on the quality for this blade because I'm going to be keeping this one. And so I'm going to take my time and do this thing the right way. And if I can do it in the time frames of the show, then that'll be great. And if not, that's okay too. So, but I'll be posting a video, and I'll try to post one every day so that you guys can keep up with that. Kind of a little Christmas gift from me to you. So thanks for joining me and checking this out, and I will see you guys tomorrow.